Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Pope Metallicus, and welcome to another episode of Rock and Roll Religion, where we've got a bit of an underground one for you today. Really solid band. I really love their output, but they weren't around for very long, pretty much from the late 80s to the mid 90s. And then they just kind of all disappeared and did their own thing. But we are talking Nuclear Assault today. Absolutely kick-ass thrash metal band coming from New Jersey. And here, as always, when we're talking the dark and heavy side of metal, we have our everyone's favorite heretic, Imperatus. How's it going, dude?
What's going on, man? I knew they were from the East Coast somewhere. I didn't realize it was Jersey.
Yeah, I think they're New Jersey from what
Jersey or New
it
York
says in
City
their bio.
because of Dan Lilker,
Yeah,
of Anthrax fame.
I'm going off of saying New Jersey because apparently that's where their first show was. So
Yeah, but
your
New
first
York
show's
City is right
usually
across
pretty
the
close
fucking
to you.
river
So
from Jersey.
yeah, so either New York or New Jersey. That
Yeah, and
very
again
close.
because of the Dan Lilker connection of him being originally in Anthrax.
Yeah,
And
that's an interesting one.
they're a New York City band.
Yeah, where they have basically no, I mean, they're basically unknown by themselves, and yet they're connected with Anthrax directly,
Right.
who's one of the big four.
Lord Thoth, what's going on, buddy?
Hey, Lord Doth, how's it going, boys? And yeah, this is one of those bands where they really just never kind of got off the ground.
I wouldn't say that. They did in my area because they were considered kind of local.
Well, yeah, but like I'm talking in terms of like the big name successes and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. But
So,
at the
and they
same
had a couple
time,
that they had a couple albums that actually debuted pretty high. Like, I think the highest they got was like 124 in the Billboard Top 100
which is
or
pretty good for
200.
thrash metal at even in that era.
Yeah, like that's impressive. So these guys had some talent, but they just kind of never went anywhere.
You know what it is? I think they just petered out.
Yeah, I thought. Well, I mean,
Because I'll tell the story I mentioned to you backstage. I'll tell now and get it out of the way. Me and a buddy of mine went to go see him in like 93, 94. They were touring for Something Wicked. This Way Comes, that album. And we left 2 songs into their set.
Ooh.
They were all of them fucking drunk and sloppy drunk like that. I think they personally just fell apart.
Yeah, I think that. Well, I mean, I read that in their bio too. That by the early '90s, that they're like I think the touring kind of tore them up because they just never had any time off.
Well, yeah, I mean that's just how it is. When it comes to touring for any genre, really.
Yeah, it's like you can either handle it or you can't.
Yeah.
And apparently these guys just were not meant to do that long term.
No.
And it was, again, the typical, metal band, like especially when you get any kind of success like they did with Survive,
right?
You just get on that grind of album tour constantly until you either detonate as a band or you just figure it out. And this is what you do now. This is just who you are.
Right.
Like Motorhead was like that, where they were never not on tour.
Right.
Because
I was like that for Maiden for a while too.
Yeah, although Maiden is. I think the live gig is really what they enjoy.
They do, but they hit that breaking point though themselves in like the late '80s of album tour, and just not really being able to unwind.
Yeah, until the wheel and like they were one of those bands, like they were great right up until they couldn't handle it, and then the wheels came off. Whereas like a band like Sabaton, those guys tour every year.
Oh yeah, there's a difference between a yearly tour, because that might only be like, they're a European band, so they might just be hitting the festivals in Europe.
Well, they tour the United States almost every year.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, and I've seen them live over here like 4 times in the last 5 years.
Like you said, though, some bands just live for that live show.
Some bands just love it, and that's just what they do. So, but they're writing songs that whole time too. Like these guys are just musicians and just absolute champions. So not everybody can handle it, and there is a lot of, first of all, metal has a lot of substance abuse issues anyway. And second of all, they're in a kind of lifestyle that encourages that behavior rather than stabilizes it.
Right. No, you're not wrong there. I mean, but like, it's weird because Nuclear Assault was one of those bands that was big in my area because, again, kind of local.
Yeah.
Them and Overkill especially, because Overkill's Northern Jersey.
Yep.
Me and a buddy of mine have actually, at some point, we're going to drive down to Jersey and go to the singer of Overkill's wife's ice cream shop.
Nice.
Because he actually works there.
Does he really?
Yeah. Well, he'll put his wife out, I mean, and Blitz is a good dude. I've met him a couple times. He's a really good dude. And
yeah, I've seen a couple interviews with him. He always seemed like a pretty nice guy.
Yeah, he is. He was. I mean, the only band I've ever met that were a bunch of cocksuckers was Morbid Angel. And they were just arrogant fucks.
That kind of makes sense.
Other than that, I mean, I've hung out with George from Cannibal Corpse a bunch of times.
He's another one, though. He looks like an axe murderer, and yet he's the nicest person you've ever met.
Same with Alex from Cannibal. No, every guy in Cannibal was nice. The only one that was, and it wasn't that they were a dick. They were just kind of, hey, how you doing? And that was about it. It was the drummer. But then again, he's probably fucking exhausted.
Yeah, I was going to say, he's a drummer in a death metal band. He is hanging on by a thread by the end of the show.
Yeah, so, but he wasn't a dick about it. He's, I think George even said something like, yeah, don't mind him. He's not really social.
Yeah. Plus, he's the drummer. His job is to be in the back there, not showing off and just doing his thing.
Yeah, well,
And Kurt Cobain, every time, man, it's just fucking great to see you. I love this shit.
But yeah, Nuclear Assault had like 3 really good albums, 4.
Yeah, and all 3 of them are the ones we're going to talk about today, starting with their first Game Over in 1986.
Yeah, Game Over, Survive, and
Handle with Care.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a long time.
This is their classic output.
Yeah. And that's such a thrash album cover.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is like stereotypical 80s thrash.
Mm-hmm.
Which is probably, I mean, again, we've always praised cover art here, and it's like, that's how you know what you're getting, is look at the album cover.
That's not necessarily always true.
Not always, but most of the time. I'd say 8 out of 10.
I'd go maybe 6 out of 10.
For it.
I would actually go 6 out of 10 because I had a buddy of mine back in the day who would buy albums based on the album cover.
True.
And yeah, he found some good ones. That's what got him into Demolition Hammer.
Fair.
But then he also came across some other ones that not so much.
Yeah. In my experience, though, if they put a lot of effort into the album cover and it looks really good, then the rest of the album's also pretty good because they put the same amount of effort and craftsmanship into that.
Fair enough.
So I'd say like 6 or 7. I mean, yeah, 6 or 7 is probably fairer than 8, but I mean, I've been burned by albums like that, but very rarely.
It's also more common in the more underground stuff, like the death and black metal, because you're like, oh wow, that's a really good album cover, and then you listen to the album, and you're like, Jesus, that sucked.
Yeah.
Or wow, that was just boring.
Yeah, like there's a lot of black metal albums out there like that where it's like, yeah, that's there.
Yeah.
That is one of the black metal albums of all time.
I mean, that's how I feel about the new Marduk single I heard. I did not like it.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but like, because I love Marduk, but I was just like,
Last couple albums have not been all that great.
Yeah, it's just like, it's not bad. It's just kind of
air.
Yeah.
Ever since like, Panzer Division, they've been kind of hit or miss.
Yeah, I'd say that.
And I noticed something too, because I've been listening to some of their older output lately and just checking the lyrics, because we were talking about that the last time I was on. Right, yeah. Their lyrics weren't as juvenile back in the day.
No, they actually had some meaning to them.
Yeah, other than what they do nowadays in some cases, where it's like, huh, okay. Makes you wonder who was writing a lot of the actual lyrical content back then.
Yeah, either that or, maybe they've just run out of material. But black metal is the kind of genre that, like, if you run out of material, just stop.
I mean, at this point, too, those guys are pushing my age.
Yeah. So, like,
I would they've got to be in their 40s by now.
I think they're probably 41, 42, most of them.
Maybe even older than that, because bear in mind, they've been around since like 89, 90.
Yeah, so I mean, if they were around, yeah, then they got to be in their late 40s, early 50s.
Because like the first album, because they actually, if my memory serves me right, they kind of started as a death metal band. Because if you
Yeah, I
listen
can
to the
see that.
first, if you listen to the first album, even the first two, still very death metal influenced, like with
Yeah, I can hear that.
breakdowns and shit like that. Anyways, that's a topic for another show.
Oh yeah, which we will probably be doing before too long here because I've been meaning to get
Yeah.
into back into the black metal scene because it's something I don't get to talk about very often, and I like terrorizing my coworkers with. So this will give me the perfect opportunity.
Yeah, it's always fun doing that.
Yeah, but yeah, Game Over, really solid album, fast as hell, aggressive, really well mixed too.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can hear the bass line pretty strongly in all of their records, but it
Mm-hmm.
seems like Game Over, like they really focused on the bass, which is great to hear because you almost never do,
I
especially in the
think it
late 80s.
also, for them, it helped having Danny Lilker in the band because he had
Yeah.
some connections.
Yeah, I think this got them into studios that wouldn't have given them the time of day otherwise.
Right.
Because, this guy was in Anthrax once upon a day.
Well, he's on their first album, I think.
Yeah. But like that opens doors that it's like, this guy was in Anthrax, not like, this is just Dan Lilker.
Right. Too bad the band he did after Nuclear Assault was not good.
Yeah.
Brutal Truth kind of sucked.
Yeah, well, not everyone's a winner.
Mm,
But his performance in this band is absolutely fucking stellar.
yeah.
Pretty much everybody kicks ass in this band.
Yeah, I mean, it was very. It's weird saying it now because at the time it wasn't, but it was kind of stereotypical thrash.
Yeah, and
But it
like
was done
when we say it, it
very,
sounds like a bad
very
thing, but
well.
it's actually
Yeah, but it
fun.
was just done very well.
Yeah, and I love the difference between East and West Coast thrash metal too. Like you can hear a lot more of the punk inspiration here.
Yes, yes, yes. But it was
They're
all
doing a
again. It
lot
was
more
also
sweeps, a lot more like just
Anthrax was
aggressive.
like that on their first couple albums too,
Yeah,
because they were influenced by the New York City hardcore and punk scene.
yeah, and you can even hear it on songs like "Got the Time" or "Antisocial." Like,
Well, Got the Time's a cover.
yeah, true, but like they do have like a very punk rhythm to them.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Same thing with Sodom, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I mean, you have a band that was black metal, thrash, and kind of punkish at times.
Yeah.
Which
I mean, for me, when I got into these guys, because I'd already gotten into the big four.
Yeah, that's
Slayer,
where everybody starts.
Metallica, Megadeth, and Anthrax.
Their most similar, I think, would be Slayer.
Yeah, Slayer or Anthrax, especially older Anthrax. But then after that, the next big four, as I call it, were, for me anyways, Nuclear Assault, Overkill, Exodus, and Testament.
I can definitely see that. I probably wouldn't put them in the big eight, but yeah,
no, I wouldn't. I'd probably swap them out for somebody like Death Angel.
Yeah, Death Angel, or maybe Anvil.
Maybe, yeah.
I could hear arguments either way on that, but like I think these guys were fantastic when they were on point, but they just weren't around long enough.
No, well, the problem was, and we've talked about this before, and I've talked about this on other shows. The early '90s was not good for metal.
No, that was where metal bands went to die.
I mean, I don't want to say it was bad because you did have some killer shit still coming out in the early '90s, but it was all underground.
Yeah, and even in 1990, you had Rust in Peace by Megadeth, you had Painkiller by Judas Priest, which is the hardest they had gone to that point.
Right. I mean, so you still did have stuff, but around the time, like 92, 93 is when things really kind of.
The grunge revolution had come.
Yeah, it might have even been earlier than that. It might have been like 91 to 93, and that era was just the downfall. But at the same time, if you look back at what was being shown on like MTV or on the radio, for example.
No, yeah, they were still around when I was a kid. Like you could hear like some whatever Megadeth was doing or Metallica certainly.
Stuff like that. It was either like the really, really popular bands that were on major labels, or it was hair metal.
Yeah,
and people were done with hair metal.
And then the new metal stuff started appearing in like 95, 96 on
A
MTV
little
and
later
stuff
than
like
that. Little later than that.
I remember
I
hearing
would say,
"Blind" in like '96 by Korn. So
that's possible. I was gonna say like 97.
yeah, I think I mean that's right where they were getting started. So
Yeah, because the first time I heard Korn, it was a bar me and my buddies would go to on what they called their alternative night, and it was everything that wasn't played normally at a bar.
yeah,
So that's where we first heard that, and we were like, "Oh, okay, that's something."
and you know what? Their first couple albums weren't horrible. Like it was kind of like what later Pantera was,
Kind of.
where it's like okay, yeah, it's more groove metal, but I dig it. Where Pantera was one of those. The further down the track listing or the album listing you get, the worse it gets. Like they peaked with Cowboys from Hell and Power Metal.
Personally, I like Vulgar Display a lot.
Yeah, Vulgar Display had some great shit on it, but I think I like Cowboys from Hell better. But then you have it kind of goes into that like Korn, Gojira, Meshuggah style of like groove metal, where I dig some of it, but it's nowhere near as good as it used to be.
Yeah, well, no, I
Um,
don't disagree with you on that.
and the Game Over was again, it's not a game changing album, no pun intended. Like it didn't invent anything or like really change how people see the genre. It was just a really fucking good thrash album.
Yeah,
Like, and
yeah,
again,
exactly.
like you said, like it's not. It's just a stereotypical thrash album done really, really goddamn well.
Same could be said for their first couple Exodus records.
Very true. And
But
when we covered it the last time you were on, I think we were covering Exodus, and the first couple Exodus records, like, they're not like breaking any new ground here, but it's just good,
they're just
solid thrash.
excellent. Yeah, like you can't really go wrong with Bonded by Blood.
No, you really can't. Like even by the time they get to what album is Toxic Waltz on?
Fabulous Disaster.
Fabulous Disaster. It's still not like anything groundbreaking. It's just really good thrash.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I've always felt that thrash metal is one of those things. If you're going to do it, you better be good at it.
Yeah, pretty much.
It'll
And Soul
show if
Assassin,
you're not.
I would not say this is a mid record. I'd say it's an excellent record. It's just not groundbreaking in any kind of way. It's just thrash metal done really fucking well.
I think the biggest thing that you could attribute to them was, the very prominent bass line.
Yep. And I would say I don't say that as an insult to these records because it's like, yes, it's stereotypical thrash, but that's not a bad thing.
No, not when it's done well. You calling an album like stereotypical black metal or stereotypical thrash metal, it doesn't mean it's. Sometimes it can mean it's a bad album because it's like, yeah, okay, yeah, sure.
Like you're just kind of going through the motions and doing what everyone else is doing.
It's like a buddy of mine used to say about black metal. He's like, yeah, because that's what I want to listen to. Some fucking Norwegian guy screaming in the woods about Satan. He's not really wrong.
Yeah, I was gonna say he has a point, but that can also be really entertaining if done correctly.
Exactly. It's certain music genres have to be done not just well, but very well.
Yeah, I'm like that with speed metal, where you cannot half-ass that kind of stuff.
No, you can't. Power metal, thrash, black metal, even death metal to a degree. You can't half-ass because
you got to really know what you're doing and craft it well, or it's just going to sound like shit at the end of the day, and people are going to tell you to fuck off because there's better bands out there. It's not even going to
sound like shit. It's just going to be, oh yeah, every other band's doing the same thing.
Yeah, and they're going to go listen to one of them rather than you.
Right.
But yeah, their first album, especially for a first release, this is absolutely fucking stellar.
Yeah.
Where they just knew what they wanted to do and were just doing it. And vocally, not a problem. Like, not my favorite thrash singer, but not bad. It fits well with the genre.
It does. He's got that more of a, how shall we say, again, stereotype thrash vocal.
Yeah, where it's not
just not deep. He's got more talent though than a lot of other thrash singers might have had. Like, he could actually sing.
Yeah. And as far as standout tracks on this album, I think Sin is probably my favorite on it.
Yeah, it's a good track.
I mean, it's hard to pick. These things were really designed as a full album, so it's hard to pick
Yes.
individual tracks out.
Because they didn't
And
the way they
ironically,
crafted an album, especially thrash in these days, they didn't know they knew they weren't getting radio play. They
yeah, so they
knew
were
they
just going to
weren't.
do an album.
Yeah, they knew the likelihood of them getting on MTV, even on Headbangers Ball, was slim to none.
Yeah,
I mean, don't get me wrong. I saw thrash metal videos on there. I saw death metal videos on there.
but you'd see like one.
Yeah, one or two, especially when it came to like the death metal stuff. Thrash, you'd see a little bit more, but those were also bands that have been around and established. And after a while, they were on a label that would push them to do a video,
Yeah,
so
I
they
mean, you
would
could,
craft a single for the album.
but even when I was a kid, and like in the late '90s, if you could find a thrash metal video on MTV or VH1 that wasn't Metallica,
Yeah,
like
or Megadeth.
you could do a drinking game with it, and you would be sober by the end of the night.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like you would have what you'd occasionally see Megadeth,
Yep.
occasionally
Once
see
in a while,
Anthrax.
every once in a while, you'd see Slayer.
Yep, they didn't do many videos though.
No, I don't think they really did many past fucking the Seasons in the Abyss album.
No, they really didn't, because that was kind of that one thing that like I think Slayer was just like that. That seems kind of cringe. We're just not into it.
Either that or the label they were on, just because they were also for Seasons in the Abyss, they were on Def Jam Records.
That's true. I forgot about that. Yeah, they were.
So they might have had more of a, because I don't know. And then even after that, they stayed on major labels. But at the time, like we said, the '90s was a place where metal bands went to die.
Yeah, and especially the larger labels. Like I'm surprised Anthrax lasted as long as they did, and Exodus as well, because they were on Atlantic Records.
Right. So it's one of those things where, the labels probably thought like, oh, this stuff isn't selling. We don't need to have them do a video. We don't need to have them, do X, Y, or Z.
Yeah,
because they already have.
You'll just be another band in the catalog.
No, I wouldn't even say just that. That's definitely part of it, but it was also the labels also rightly figured that they had their audience.
Yeah,
they figured, and when it came to a lot of the more heavier metal bands, that they would turn around.
You've already hit the limit of your audience. Like everybody who's going to listen to you already has
that, and they could also factor in like, okay, we're going to make X amount of money off this release. If so let's keep it,
and that's all we're ever going to make on it, pretty much.
That okay, we're going to make this much. It doesn't warrant pumping out like a music video. It doesn't mean it doesn't matter to put out all sorts of promotion and things like that.
Yeah, like you have like a level of investment you're willing to put into a band,
right.
And like videos and stuff like that were expensive back then. So it was kind of like, yeah, we don't really need to promote that. So, it was what it was. Like the 90s, metal was no longer the thing.
No.
Mainly because a lot of the metal bands were out to make some really big contracts and the record labels didn't want to pay them.
There was that, but it also wasn't selling as well.
That's true. But
like I said, people were getting tired of the hair bands.
The hair bands were going out of style, but the actual like heavy metal and thrash guys were still killing it.
Right. And I also think too, they looked at what the future of like the heavier bands were, and it was at that point it was trending towards death metal.
Yeah.
And the labels again rightly factored in that this is not going to sell to a mainstream audience.
Yeah, and they were just, especially the main labels were just like, we want nothing to do with these guys. And then even most of the metal labels were like, we'll sign you, but you're just going to be another band in our catalog, essentially.
Right.
Because this is before you had like, Nuclear Blast and Napalm Records.
Nuclear Blast was around for a while. I mean,
but they were just starting out at this point in like the early 90s.
Yeah, probably so. But I can remember, and it was after high school. It might have been 95 or 96. I bought one of their comps. It was a Nuclear Blast compilation called shit, what was that called? But I don't remember what the name of the compilation called, but it was like a 2-disc compilation of all the of their various artists, and that was the third one in that series of comps.
Okay.
So I think they were established a little bit earlier than you might think, but later than I think.
Yeah, so
Because I
they're
was
probably
listening
in
to
that
Nuclear
like
Blast stuff
no
when I was in
man's
high
land.
school,
Like
and I
that's the funny
graduated
thing.
in
It's like the late
'94.
'80s and early '90s is like this memory hole where like no one's sure
Mm-hmm.
entirely what happened, but everything
Yeah.
changed in that period.
Yes.
Where it's like we don't know what happened, but something did.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like Napalm Records started out right about this period, like 92, 93, I think.
Yeah, sounds about right.
And their stable became absolutely fucking stellar.
Yeah, which is I still find funny to this day because the biggest act they had for the longest time was Abigor.
Yep, Albigor, and the other really huge one that they've signed is Iced Earth.
Right, but I'm talking about early days of Napalm Records. They were just a black metal label.
Yeah, not yeah, and they've kind of gone more towards the power and symphonic metal side of the house.
Oh, they are German
No,
or
and
Austrian.
like let's face it, Delane's on there, Hammerfall's on there, Ailstorm's on there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And Illestorm actually started, I believe, as Nuclear Blast or Metal Blade.
I think they were Metal Blade, and then they
They
went
were,
to
yeah.
Napalm.
So I mean, it's hard to really say because, like I said, with Napalm, like their three big acts for a long time were Abigor, Summoning, and Falkenbach.
Yep, and even these guys, like, but this is the only one they ever did with Combat Records.
I think Combat went under not too long after this.
I maybe so, but I think they switched to IRS Records for the next one, and I think EMI produced number 3.
Mm.
So like they were one of these bands that was kind of bouncing around labels.
Yeah.
Because it was just, and yeah, Soul Assassin, a lot of the soulless pop music from the '90s. Please, for the love of God, if someone can remove those memories from my brain, like make that happen.
I'm glad I was already established as a metalhead by that time.
I was a kid back then, so I didn't really have a choice.
Yeah, no, I unfortunately, I don't know if it was unfortunate, fortunate that I wasn't.
Yeah, it was that's just one of those like, why? I had to live through one of the worst eras of music.
But the next album, Survive.
Yes.
I think that's really where they came into their own.
This is the best fucking album they've ever done. I'll just say it right out.
Yeah. I mean, I like Handle with Care. That was like the first record I heard from them.
Yeah, it's still a good, like, that's not the shit on the other two. They're still excellent. This is just fucking phenomenal.
Yeah.
I love the intro track. Was it Rise from the Ashes?
Mm-hmm.
Where they changed tempos and speeds like 4 times in a minute.
Yeah, I think I would have to say this is their most aggressive album.
Yeah, and that blast beat at the end of Rise from the Ashes, where they're just kind of building into that fucking intro. That's how you start a mosh pit.
Yeah.
Like half of this album sounds like it was designed to get people to throw each other around.
Yeah.
Because, if it's good thrash metal, well, it might
that's probably what you're gonna end up doing.
Yep. I would love to have seen these guys live especially on this tour, because god damn, this sounds like it was made to be played live.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, apparently Combat got taken over by Relativity, and then they got bought out by Sony, and they shut them both down.
Yeah, because Relativity, I remember Relativity, they were based out of like the middle of PA.
Yeah. But nice to know that Sony has been the EA of music for a long time.
Oh,
not just
yes,
a recent development. Like, oh yeah, we're just going to buy up these 2 failing studios and then shut them down just to get their catalog. God, I can't stand dealing with Sony.
Yeah, it's kind of it is what it not so much. Only so much you can do about it.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's to the point where I will not buy a PlayStation because I really just hate dealing with Sony that much.
Yeah,
even though it means I can't play games like Dark Souls or Ghost of Tsushima, I don't care.
Dark Souls.
Oh, that's right. They did finally port those.
Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3 are on Xbox and PC. The only one that isn't is Demon Souls.
Yeah, so but like
and Bloodborne.
Yeah, Bloodborne and Demon Souls aren't on there. So like I could play those, but if I bought a PlayStation, but I'm just like, I'm not buying an entire $500 system to play 4 games.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen. And especially when I actively hate the company, because I used to love PlayStation. I had a PS1 and a PS2. And their customer service just pissed me off to the point where I will never deal with them again.
Oh, Soul Assassin, I heard about that, and I want nothing to fucking do with it.
Yeah.
Netflix is doing it.
Oh.
So, I mean, there's a chance it could be good, but...
Hey, Edge Runners was good.
Yeah, but it depends on who they get to do it.
Yeah, so, like, this is the thing with Netflix and Amazon. Like, they've done really great shit. They've also done really horrible shit.
Yeah. And most people...
So it's just like, you got a coin flip whether it's going to be great or horrible. But this album, just in its entirety, I'm not even going to pick a favorite track. Just go pick it up and listen to it. Unfortunately, getting actual physical copies of this is almost impossible.
Possible,
Not only impossible, but very expensive. Like, there was a CD of this on Amazon earlier for $300.
Wow.
Yeah, they never made that many copies of this album.
That's, again, not surprising if they were on a major label that was trying to capitalize on the popularity of the rise of thrash.
So I would definitely look this one up on YouTube, see if it's your kind of album, and then try and find it somewhere. But well worth a listen. It's a fairly long thrash album too. All of their albums are like 59 minutes to an hour something.
Yeah, about that.
They're well worth it.
I almost want to say they're back around.
Are they?
Well, there's a couple albums I've never heard of. Pounder, Third World Genocide, Alive Again.
Yeah, I saw those in their discography. It's just a mix. It's just like a remix of all of their other stuff.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. It's like they've just like mashed up EPs from all 4 of their records, and that's just kind of it. Which I don't like, because these albums were written as a coherent piece.
Yeah.
And they will not do well if mashed together. It'll just sound like a jumbled mess. And that's not good.
Not so much, no.
That's not what we're into. But I do have to wrap it up, but I quickly want to get to Handle with Care, because this is another outstanding record from these guys.
Yeah, probably their last good one.
Yeah, after this, it tapers off pretty hard. But then, like you said, they were hardcore into substance abuse issues by then. Touring was starting to get to them. And I really think that was kind of their death knell in like 1995. But the first 3 records these guys came out with are just awesome.
Yeah, they're a band. If people tell me they like thrash, I turn around, and this is one of the bands I will recommend.
Oh yeah, well, it's like that. It's like, oh yeah, I want to get into some thrash that isn't the big 4. These guys right here.
Yeah.
It's like nothing. They're nothing special, but God, are they good at what they do. And there's nothing wrong with that, with just being a really solid kick-ass thrash band. It's like, people like to insult bands, but like, oh, you're just kind of a generic rock band. Like, there's nothing wrong with being a generic rock band if you're really good at what you do and make songs that people want to hear. Like, I hear that thrown at Airborne all the time, where it's like, oh yeah, you're just another hard rock band. Like, yeah, but they're an absolutely kick-ass one.
Right. Like I said, certain things, as long as it's done well, it doesn't matter if it's stereotypical.
Yeah, it's
or derivative.
As
long as you're good at it.
You can be the most power metal of power metal, and people will love it just for that. Because power metal's over the top and ridiculous, and everyone loves it. Looking at you, Glory Hammer.
Yeah, well,
they're Scotsmen, so first of all, they're just not taking it seriously. They're just doing weird shit because, Scots.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
and also, some of their albums are just fucking hysterical because
that too.
it's just over the top, almost a caricature of power metal, which I love. Like, Steel Panther is one of the best hair metal bands out there. In fact, they're way better than most of the other hair metal bands, and they are basically saying just a parody of hair metal,
Yeah.
which I think is hilarious. That the guys making fun of them are better than they are. And Demo Hammer's another one. Overkill for sure.
Yep. And the new Overkill is really fucking good.
Yeah, I wanted you on for that show when I went over the new record. I think you were working, but oh god, that new record is great.
Mm-hmm.
I've had that thing on repeat. It's a lot more progressive than I thought it would be. Like, there's a lot of interesting musical elements in there that I wouldn't expect for an Overkill record. But I was just sitting there like, all right. Yeah, the new Vatane stuff is pretty good too, though.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the agony and ecstasy of Vatane. Which, if you guys are into black metal, go listen to Vatane. You will thank me later. They're really fucking good. We'll have to do an episode on them someday.
For sure.
Because they're one of the big boys. But yeah, this era of thrash metal is just one of the best things of all time. Like, if you're into the more extreme musical genres, like, this is where you start. Is like the late 80s, early 90s thrash and death metal scene, and then it kind of goes down into like the Norwegian genres. Of just, this is where the rabbit hole goes. Before you know it, you'll be listening to Caladan Brood and stuff like us, and
yeah,
the really good shit. I still laugh that you showed Caladan Brood to 70s and you loved it.
Yep. I've hit 70s with a few bands, and he was like, "Wow."
Yeah, I've done the same, more on the NWO THM side of it with bands like Ambush and Enforcer.
Mm-hmm.
I loved his reaction to Sabaton, where he's like, how have I never heard these guys before? And I don't know how he's never heard it before either. They're everywhere. It's like, if you're in the metal circles, Sabaton is absolutely everywhere.
Yeah.
Either the metal or history circles, which we're in both. And they are basically where those two communities meet. Hey, he's old. It's not that he's special. He just forgot. But we're gonna have to talk about so many bands going forward because I need to get back into the darker side of stuff. But with all that being said, what do you got coming up this week, man?
Work. That's about it.
Yeah. You sometimes do a weekly or a discussion with Doc and a couple other guys on comics. That's usually a really good listen because these guys know their shit when it comes to comics.
I know a bit, and they know more than me.
Yeah, the one you did with Max von Priestley was fucking awesome.
Yeah, he's going to be a semi-regular, I believe. As long as he's around when I do the show, he said he'll hop in pretty much whenever. He's a good dude.
Yeah, he seems it. And then, as for me, you can usually find me on here every Sunday for Rock and Roll Religion. Like I said, just after this, you can find me over on Rumble on the Verdant Mint channel for our Starfinder stream, which is basically just us being jackasses on a tabletop RPG, and it's hilarious. So you should definitely go check that out. And then every so often, when I have time, I will do more random fandom episodes because I have a lot of fun doing them, and I know you guys have a lot of fun listening to them. In fairness, you're coming on for BattleTech Part 2.
Probably.
Because I already did one on BattleTech, but let's face it, a 2-hour stream barely covers the setting itself, let alone any of the cool stuff. But with that all being said, take care, stay safe. I love you all, and I'll catch you next time.